Hello and welcome to our Tech Talk series with the Orange County Library System. My name is Andrew, and we want to welcome you to the program. We're going to be joined with us today by John Fay of Resilience Inc. He is a local talent that basically works with something called SEL or SEL if you attempt to search it. But he's going to explain a lot about what that is and how that relates, and we're going to ask him some questions to fill us in on how technology relates in his field along the way as well. So I want to go ahead and get started by welcoming John Fay to our live session with Tech Talks. Hello and welcome, John. How are you doing today?
Doing well. Thank you, Andrew. Great to be here.
Good, good. It's wonderful to have you here. So I guess we're going to go ahead and get started. What is SEL? How do we get into what that is?
Well, it's an acronym that's gaining a lot of attention right now. It stands for Social Emotional Learning, and it's essentially, there's different phrases for it in different parts of the country. I like to call it emotional intelligence, and that's kind of the oldest phrase out there. There's IQ and there's EQ, and nowadays there's different variations of a SEL. People call it SEL. I like to kind of spell it out like DOD. People don't say DOD, they say DOD, and you're kind of brainwashed in the beginning about how to say acronyms. So my brainwashing was SEL, and it's pretty complex. I want to say that we've all agreed in the SEL space that there are five core components to it. So you want to kind of hear
Oh,
the
okay.
crash course on
Oh yeah,
what it's
absolutely.
composed of? Okay. So yeah, we've got CASEL is CASEL is another acronym. The space is almost like the military with so many acronyms. And CASEL is the Collaborative for Academic Social Emotional Learning. They've
Okay.
basically established the lingo as well as the standards for SEL, and they've come up with five core competencies. When Resilience Incorporated puts that out to the world, we call it five core topics, just because
Got it. Got it.
sometimes second graders, third graders don't use the word competencies, so we like to put it into their language. But essentially, it's self-awareness, self-management, social awareness, relationship skills, and then the fifth being goal setting with decision making. And
Okay.
so, I hear a lot of people say, "Well, oh yeah, SEL is mindfulness," and I say, "Well, it's more than that. There's five core topics, but even with resilience, we've developed curriculum and we've developed more than 50 different topics within those five. So, and our plan was originally have 65, and we could go to 100 if we wanted to, because, it kind of gets deeper the more you dive into it.
Okay. Well, so the application of Castle is kind of dictating a lot of how this starts up, at least as a framework. Am I understanding that correctly?
I don't say dictating. I say they give guidelines. They've
Guidelines. Okay.
yeah, they kind of they're I call them the guru of the industry. They've put a collection of good science research out there, as well as they've vetted some programs, and they've been in the space for the longest time. So, but they don't say, hey, this is what you have to do. They really give recommendations and guidelines, and they are the industry guide, if you will.
Got it. Well, so what kind of benefits does this kind of education afford an individual? And are you looking at doing this with children only, us, or with adults, or is it like a mix?
It really has to be both. Do you mind if I give you the history of resilience and why we got into it as far as
Oh,
like it,
absolutely. Go ahead.
yeah, so a few years back there was the school shooting over in Parkland, Florida, and
Okay.
we're here in Tampa. My wife and I were just stopped in our tracks when that school shooting happened. There've been a lot of school shootings, a lot of shootings in general, and nightclub shooting in Orlando. We I was in Vegas for a business trip, came back, and there was a shooting over in Orlando. There was a church shooting, there was a mall shooting, and we kept thinking, why is everybody just out to kill each other? And we started to look into ways to reduce violence in schools, because our main concern at the time, my daughter was 7, our oldest daughter, and our youngest wasn't even born yet. But we kept thinking, how do we protect our daughter? And this is one of those situations where there's a lot that's not in your control, but we kept thinking there's got to be a way that we can get involved to contribute, because everybody seems like they're pointing the finger, and it seems like nobody is doing anything different and preventing the next one from happening. um, Politicians kept kind of pointing the finger, and the media would sensationalize things, but there was no solution coming out to prevent the next tragedy. And we did a little bit of research and found out that social emotional learning was reducing violence in schools in Colorado specifically. And then we researched social emotional learning and found out that the industry was a little bit compartmentalized back then, about 3 years, 3.5 years ago. And what I mean by that is, if you need brain surgery, you're not going to go to a heart surgeon. A heart surgeon might be phenomenal, highly qualified, best in their field, but you want somebody who's specialized, and that's what the SEL field was doing, is specializing very, very well. A program for kindergarten, a program for pre-K, a program for elementary, a program for middle school, a program for high school. Different program providers had their niche, but nobody had a full K through 12 or pre-K through 12 that had the things that I was looking for my daughter in her school. And so we decided, okay, well, maybe we can contribute and give to that industry. And so we get into social emotional learning mainly as a reaction to a tragedy, thinking there's got to be something we can do. And took little baby steps, first doing research, and then finding an area where we can contribute to the space. Not thinking that we knew it all and that they weren't doing it right, but that the brain surgeons doing brain surgery,
Mhm.
let them do that. Let the pre-K organization do that, and then we can come in with something that helps to connect all of that. And we just started developing curriculum in a way that it was engaging. And during our process in the last 3.5 years, I like to say it's similar to what Richard Branson commented on, in starting up the airline, Virgin Airlines. He had Virgin Records, and then he saw a problem with a flight from one place to the next, and he thought he could do it better because that there were flights everywhere, but not to where he wanted to go, and he could fix that problem if he jumped in and created an airline. So he did, and he named it Virgin Airlines because he said, we were all virgins at what we were doing. We had no idea what we were doing. We were new at it. It was, we had no experience at it. And that's how I looked at us getting into social emotional learning, is we knew there was a need. We knew that we could be a benefit to the industry in the field and space somehow, some way, by contributing. And then we figured it out as we went along. And part of what we've been doing is practicing what we preach, because part of social emotional learning is the growth mindset, versus the fixed mindset. The fixed mindset is, oh, I don't know this. I'm not good at this. I haven't done this before. I can't do it. The growth mindset is, I'm going to learn, and I'm going to be better tomorrow than I was yesterday. And I'm going to get better and keep learning and developing and growing. And so as we developed our curriculum, we were developing ourselves as well, and really, practicing the content, and then learning all the other 50 topics within social emotional learning. But we just wanted to address a problem rather than walk by it and be a bystander and think, the bystander impact. You see a car accident, you drive by thinking somebody else is going to fix it, and nobody's going to fix that problem because everybody keeps driving by. And so we stopped being bystanders. We jumped into social emotional learning, and we've developed a curriculum now that's quite comprehensive. So that's how
Okay.
it started.
So you were mentioning that everybody was in their niche systems, kindergarten, pre-K, up
Mhm.
through the different grades. Um, and does that mean your system, or at least the system that you're approaching, is more of a graduation system where you're starting as young as makes sense and going all the way up then? Because you were mentioning also adults would be involved then. Am I correct in this idea?
Our original focus was K through 12, and we
Okay.
wanted to just have a program that a student could matriculate through K through 12 without any gaps or overlap.
Mhm.
And what that means is, um, we created so much variety in our program that if a student has not taken a certain topic, then they can learn that topic through our program called Selena, and it's Social Emotional Learning Enhancement Application is Selena. It's another acronym. We figured we'd join the party of creating a million acronyms, and
Sticking with the theme.
yeah, and the Selena program has video lessons, audio exercises, one-to-one exercises, PDF lesson plans. A variety of different methods to consume the information VR games. We're also developing augmented reality and console video games. And we thought, you know, we're not going to be like, we're trying to be different and unique and provide something that's highly engaging. And other SEL providers might not provide the video lessons or the VR games. So that's where we can kind of contribute to the industry and bring something new. And our biggest obsession was engagement. Are we going to provide content where the kids just don't care about this topic and don't want to learn about it? Or are we going to provide this topic in an engaging way where the students say, I can't wait for that SEL lesson because it's fun, it's exciting. So, so we really wanted to study what was in the industry, not repeat what was already there, contribute in a way where it was bringing something new and innovative and engaging, and do our share.
Okay. So, correct me if I'm mistaking how this ends up working then. So, you're looking at traditional methods that have been applied and then incorporating those into semi and non traditional methods and even gamified concepts to create a flexible pathway, not even really a learning plan, but actually a pathway to understanding the material and just absorbing it as natural course. My
Exactly.
got it.
Exactly. With respect to traditional, we recruited school teachers, and then we recruited mental health counselors to talk to us and to tell us and sometimes jump in and actually do the development of the outlines for lesson plans, the outlines for the one-to-one exercises, the script for the VR game. What is this person going to hear and whispering in their ear? For content that is coaching and advising in the way a mental health counselor would. So we knew that there was a problem and it needed to be addressed, but we didn't know how to do that. And we knew that there were other people that would be much more educated in that field and experienced in that field. So we recruited everybody that we could, experts in education, psychology, uh, and then actors and actresses, who are professional actors, because we thought, well, let's just create a selfie video, about a certain topic, and realized not all selfie videos are engaging or interesting to watch. We really needed a little bit of help from professionals, and it was quite serendipitous. We had professional actors who were former school teachers,
Mm.
so they understand what it takes to entertain and educate at the same time. And I thought, wow, what are the odds that we're running into actors who know what we're trying to accomplish and can accomplish it? But it was something where, once we put it out there, this is what we're doing, this is what we need help with. Those who came to us were those who kind of had the qualifications and agreed with this. And many of our staff said, I've always wanted to do something like this. You just never had the avenue. And thanks for putting this road in front of me. And, we really just were asking out the world for help and brought some really talented individuals in. And just to give you an idea of the growth during COVID, we grew from, in 3 years, 5 people sitting at a table to then 60, then 80, then COVID hit and then down to 40. And then when we really got our recruiting in place during COVID, we grew up to 374 staff members remotely all over the world, 13 different
Okay.
countries, all 3 time
Wow.
zones of the US, contributing to develop content, edit it, critique it, redo it, and create videos, create audio exercises, and all the different tools that we provide. And so it really, caught a lot of attention, and also, recruiting individuals from different schools, different universities and colleges throughout the world, aiming for the U.S., but then somehow, people hearing about us in other countries who had friends and family members who had done internships with us or other project work. So it took on a life of its own. We had no idea it was going to grow that fast, that quick, that large, that quickly. But people see that, you know, emotional intelligence is important. It's a key to health. And so it's not difficult to recruit people in to help what we're doing. So people see the value in it.
Well, so if everything changed apparently for the pandemic for you guys, how exactly did that shift? I mean, you're saying you grew that much in staff. I'm going to assume your techniques and methods had to change a lot too, especially with like when the lockdowns happened and then a lot of people started doing virtual engagement. That probably
Mhm.
had to mess with your methods a bit too, I would assume.
Yeah, when we started out, we went to visit University of South Tampa. Yeah, I'm sorry, University of South Florida in Tampa, and then we would do in-person meetings, and everything was in person.
Okay.
COVID hit, and I remember it was March 13th where we had canceled an event and said, let's just be safe about this. I don't know if this COVID thing's going to blow up or not, but let's just, approach it with caution. And that first 3 weeks after COVID had hit, we had almost no staff members reporting in for activities. And I thought, okay, great. Our schools are not contacting us back because now the K through 12 schools had to go to remote and they weren't used to it. And so they weren't prepared. So they said, listen, SEL goes in the back burner. We've got to teach reading, writing, arithmetic. And we lost our staff, we lost our customers. And, I went through a mourning period where I'm like, it's dead. The life that I had is dead. The goals and aspirations that I had for 2020 are dead. And I went into about a 3-day funk and said, Friday at 5 o'clock, I'm going to get over this, mindset that I have. And sure enough, I gave myself the time to absorb what was happening in 2020 and then regroup and then recharge and then go after, all right, let's figure this out. We're all going remote. How do we do this? And then we realized we could actually be bigger, better, because if we reach out to the whole country and go to every college and university in the country rather than one school, USF in Tampa, then we can have individuals who are doing student internships to get school credit, who are extremely ambitious and very capable to conduct activities. And we weren't limited to one time zone or one school. And so it was really, we get kicked in the shins like everybody else did at COVID, and then we kind of regrouped, and we had to live up to the name. We called the company Resilience, so we had to bounce back. I should have called it Ice Cream. It's
Would have meant something a little different, I
a
guess.
little easier.
Fair enough. Fair enough. So, how is technology implemented in this? If there's some traditional face-to-face methods, upwards of the VR method you were mentioning before, there's got to be a whole bunch in between. I'm wagering.
So we have an AI app in development. I don't want to kind of spill the beans too much on it, but I'll
Right.
give you
That's fair.
I'll get no. I mean, I'll give you the concept is that if I'm on the phone with somebody that I know and they're angry, I can tell by the tone of their voice. If they're really happy, you can tell that their voice is smiling. If they're a little bit sad, the first few words you can listen in and say, what's wrong? You sound a little off today. Um, and not all of us pick up on those things. That's an emotional intelligence that we have to be able to pick up on it because we're so busy doing so many different things you might not always realize. But what I realized is that there's an app to diagnose Parkinson's through the voice, because there's a certain tremble in the voice that happens when you have full-blown Parkinson's. And there's also tremble in the voice 20 years ahead of when it kicks in full-blown. And there's an app now with an algorithm that listens to a voice and that has listened to thousands of voices with Parkinson's and without it. And you can be diagnosed through a mobile app with Parkinson's. And I thought, wow, what if we could just diagnose a bad mood? Every now and then I'm hangry, I'm hungry, angry. I need a candy bar. And my wife is cognizant of that. She knows, when I'm getting hungry and cranky, she can hear it in my voice. She knows my mood. But what if there was an app that could catch you when you're in a bad mood and then help you to correct that? And maybe like a mood adjustment, mood identifier app that can pick up on your voice and then help you to improve your mood. Maybe play your favorite song or throw a funny video in front of you. And so we're developing an app that has voice recognition and emotion recognition software through artificial intelligence. And it takes listening to a lot of different emotions and then identifying the patterns, and then essentially, I don't want to say diagnosing and treating because we're not a
Right.
medical
Because that
app.
sounds totally different. I know.
We can't give any medical advice or anything like that. But a BFF, a best friend who can listen to you and kind of identify and then tell you, when you're in a certain mood. And if we can do that and have an app for that, then I think we can help to improve mood and improve emotional states. And let's look at the severe situations. Somebody is consistently angry. their app catches it and notifies them. And now you've got somebody notifying you when you're angry. Rather than everybody walking around on eggshells around you who doesn't want to bother you when you're angry, the app calls you out on it and tries to change that. How many bad situations would we nip in the bud and stop before they exacerbate if we could just catch somebody in a bad mood, just starting out in a bad mood, and catch them and stop them? Um, we look at 15,000 murders per year in the United States. We look at 70,000, actually, it's now 90,000 drug overdose deaths. Um, suicide is about 40 to 45,000 per year. There's a lot of situations that we could catch and avoid if we could only catch it right at the moment and then prevent it from escalating. And that's just kind of a sampling, of a bunch of numbers that bother me. That boy, if there was an app for that, to kind of catch emotions, then and so that's what we're trying to build on with AI. So um,
And there was
as
always
well.
that idea that there's an app for that for almost everything, and you didn't really consider that. Oh, wait, there's a way to address your emotional concepts and whatnot. Does that mean it also then has applications and support, or does your agency look at support with like cognitive behavior therapies and stuff like that, working with medical, or is this not the angle in which your theater works in?
That's a very good question. We will always want to produce the tools. When it comes to providing a service, that takes a tremendous amount of resources. We're of the mindset to put a lot of people together who can build tools. And
Got it.
so we would eventually build the tool, make sure that it works successfully. Even if it's wrong half the time, it's better than nothing, in my opinion. But that's my opinion. And I think that if we put the tools out there and then develop them over time and let service providers connect, so that the minute we have an anger situation, we can connect to a mental health therapist, a counselor, a partner, a big brother, anybody who could do something which is better than nothing, then I think we'll make an impact. And I've got big dreams and aspirations, and I'm very realistic, and I know that things take time and there's a progression and to developing these tools, but the applications are I mean, unlimited. It's if you can identify emotions a little bit better and control them. I can't imagine any month that goes by that I don't look back and think, ooh, I should have said something different in that situation, or controlled my emotions in that situation. And if I think that, then, I'm sure there's billions of other people who think the same way. If they had a little bit of help with that, this technology that we have, these smartphones and devices, help us with everything else. Why can't they help us with self-control? And that's the thought behind it. But I'm sure we're going to need, a whole village of helpers with practitioners and other folks who could help. Once we create the tool, then they can help, put it to use.
So then, is there pushback against this? Like I mean, obviously, as things progress, and I'm sure there's certain resistance to social emotional learning, but like even the applications of the tech have got to have some pushback. And I would imagine there's people that are just resistant to pulling away from that in-person engagement.
Absolutely. I've studied change management, just change for the nature of change, and there's always going to be a bit of a bell curve with all changes. So, for example, smartphones, there was the early adopters, middle adopters, late adopters, and then the never adopters. And then those who don't like smartphones, that are told, listen, our network doesn't support flip phones anymore. You have to have a smartphone. That's where it's like, okay, I'm not going to adopt it. I'm just not going to use a phone. And some technology replaces previous technology and forces us into new technology. And there's almost always a bell curve with technology, whether it's switching over to typewriters, going from horse and buggy to a car, going for any technology in the history of innovation has had, that bell curve of adoption. And the way I look at technology is that it's changing so much faster today than it did 10 years ago. And the new generation of folks who are coming up now are being raised with technology. I just received a video today showing that my generation X is the last generation to have been raised with no internet, and no smartphones, and no cell phones. Actually, there was a day in my early years where I didn't have a cell phone. And nowadays you're raised with technology. So, as time goes on, there's going to be less and less late adopters and no adopters, because that's not an option anymore. There is no horse to buy. You have to get a car. There is no flip phone. You have to get a smartphone. Now the other idea that I have is that every technology can be used for good or for bad. It is a tool. Every tool can be used for good or bad. You could take a hammer and use it to bang a nail, or to damage something. And so we're looking to build technology that helps people. Can it be used to harm people? Every technology can. And so, I've thought a lot about, should we build a technology that picks up on human emotion? What if that's used, in a malicious way? And my thought is that A, it's inevitable, and B, we can help people. And our goal is to help people. So that's what we're going to do.
I like that. I really do. It's just a good way to kind of frame it, especially the idea of, old technologies to new technologies. There's allegories everywhere. I mean, we're talking about horses. I mean, cars are still measured in horses, even though it doesn't even relate to the actual horse anymore, and even that's going away as we go. So what kind of things besides AI are you looking at or applying that goes into the realms of like new technology? Um, like I think very early on we talked very briefly like virtual reality, and is there other form of gamified, or is that not even what virtual reality is being used for?
So yeah, I'll kind of give you an idea of what we're doing with VR, and then the augmented reality. It's kind of too soon in the development process to even talk about how we're applying it. But I can give you an idea that identifying emotions is something that a certain segment of the U.S. population has a severe challenge with, and so we want to give tools that teach individuals how to identify emotions and do it through fun, engaging ways. But the Selena VR development is quickly producing results, and our first version of Selena VR um, exposes individuals to a bit of a scary situation. Our first priority was to teach about fear and anxiety by subjecting you to a situation that causes fear and anxiety and giving you the opportunity to overcome that fear and anxiety. And so you're put into a situation of a space station, and the space station is being hit by an asteroid storm, and you've got to get off the space station and walk over a very thin catwalk above the sun to get to your spacecraft and leave and get out of that situation. And the walk on that catwalk is scary. And I can tell you, having been doing some dangerous things in my youth when I would skydive, it's different when you have a parachute or you have a railing. When you're walking over a catwalk, a thin catwalk above the sun, in the VR environment, it's scary. And so we subject the user, the gamer, to a bit of a scary situation, and it causes a little bit of fear and anxiety. And then we give them the opportunity to think about controlling their anxiety, and then we have them overcome that fear and anxiety. Now, we did our first focus group with 6 students in elementary school. When we said this is what we're going to do in the game you're going to play, 2 of the students said, I don't want to do this. I don't like heights, and I don't want to play. And then they saw the other 4 students playing the game and having fun, and then they realized, oh, okay, so it's not that scary. And they did the first student who was afraid started doing the catwalk and then walked her way through it, and then stopped and said, I don't want to do this, and took the headset off. And then the other student went and successfully walked through the catwalk. And then the other student who was afraid to, who stopped halfway, did it again, and then she completed it. So at the end, all 6 students had completed a situation of overcoming fear and anxiety. The first 4 were almost fearless. It was more entertainment for them. But the idea that peer pressure was a factor that we didn't even realize until the mental health counselor said to us, they sometimes need a nudge. We all sometimes need a nudge. And to see somebody else doing it in a way that's not scary is sometimes helping us to overcome our own fear and anxiety. Like, oh, it's not as bad as I think it is. But, the overall outcome of the experience was giving students an individual to overcome fear and anxiety. Now, we can talk about fear and anxiety in a book. We can talk about it in a classroom. We can have people share their fears and anxiety. That doesn't help you to overcome fear and anxiety. The thing that does help you is overcoming it, right? It's like cooking. I can read a book about cooking and I can watch the TV shows about cooking, but I can't cook unless I get in front of that stove and I practice. And so we're with the Selena VR, we're giving individuals an opportunity to practice overcoming fear and anxiety. And a therapist will call it exposure therapy. You've got to expose yourself to that which you are uncomfortable with, and then overcome it. And so without the threat of being above a catwalk and the actual situations that can cause fear and anxiety, being in the privacy of your own home and doing this is really beneficial. And every now and then you can do a little bit of cheating and lift up the goggles and look at the ground and see that you're not going to fall to your demise above the sun. And and that's just start phase one. So what we're adding to Selena VR, in addition to fear and anxiety, is social anxiety and anger management. And going back to their very original situation that made us stop and think, how can we contribute? Anger management is a huge part of what we want to address, because if we don't prevent a school shooting, what's the point of all this? If we don't prevent a murder, a suicide, a drug addiction, a dropout from school, or just maybe an argument, then what is the point of all this work that we're doing to try to develop these tools? And so now the next phase of Selena VR is we've got fear and anxiety covered. We're adding social anxiety, where the individual is addressing their social anxiety and overcoming that during the VR experience. And then they're given situations that make them angry. They tick them off, and then they have to control their anger and practice controlling their anger. It was a lot of fun, Andrew, developing that, because we had to stop and think, how can we tick off gamers? How can we make somebody want to throw the controller through the window?
I mean, make the game cheat. That'll do it.
I don't want to, no spoilers, but there's some fun. We had such an entertaining time, coming up with writing down ideas on how to make people mad. But then giving them the option to control their anger and giving them help and giving them practice. And with that, there's 3 areas there. If we keep going, if we had a $10 million investment or donation from the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation to really develop this and get it into every classroom in the country and get this in front of every student who needs help with self-management, which is every student, every human being. Imagine what we can accomplish if we could get this out there.
That'd be extremely impressive. Honestly, I'd love to see it. It almost sounds like the idea would be basically addressing crisis management before crisis management's needed, in a lot of ways, because it's kind of like, oh, we're going to address this stressful situation, and you're actually developing a bunch of practices that can be self-internalized and then executed before even the need to go into crisis management would be necessary.
It's very preventative. If you stop and look at any problem our society has, you can break that down to behaviors, and then those behaviors are caused by emotions. And so if you teach about self-management from kindergarten through 12th grade, and you've got 13 years of a student being exposed to education, training, and testing on self-management, and as well as the other topics within social emotional learning, self-awareness, relationship management, goal setting, decision making, you're not going to have the number of problems as a society that doesn't have SEL taught at all. And so this is very preventative. This is, the lack of emotional intelligence is the common denominator of all of our problems. So you tell me any problem, I can tell you the behavior and then the emotion that caused that problem. Emotions and a lack of self-awareness and self-control cause all of our problems. And so this is investing in preventative medicine, which is not very popular. It's not an easy sell, but logically, it's the smartest thing to do. It's the best investment long term. And I refuse to just put the wrong medicine on a situation. I refuse to treat the symptom rather than the cause. We're trying with social emotional learning to really address the causes of a lot of problems. And and I think that as more and more people realize, wow, you're right. I mean, academic intelligence has been taught in our country for a very long time. Imagine that emotional intelligence is the missing ingredient to get to the next level of human achievement that we all want. And achievement is part of what we teach, and what we provide content for those who teach when it comes to social emotional learning. People, I've had too many people say to me, "Oh, mindfulness, that's what SEL is." And I think, wow, that's one uh, element of it, but there's 50 in our curriculum. There's other programs that have 20, 75. There's a lot to emotional intelligence, not just one particular topic. And if we get this in the K through 12 and have it taught, trained, and tested. And when I say trained, I mean don't just read the book. Practice it. You got to get in front of the kitchen. You got to cook, and then you got to take the test. Um, we will see a ripple effect in every direction in our society by having emotional intelligence taught, trained, and tested for 13 years, K through 12. But that's one person's opinion.
That's fair. I'm guessing then the idea is that your staff then is also constantly learning and growing as either the science or and or observations and everything else are changing, and they're reapplying everything as they see it too.
Yeah, that's some of the most gratifying information that I come across is when I have somebody who pursues an internship with us and they only have 4 months to work with us, and then they leave, and then they send a letter back saying, I really am in a better situation now to deal with the world because I now know social emotional topics and am applying them to my life. And boy, is life so much easier when you know this stuff. And so, when people have less arguments, when people have less frustration over situations, when they can accept reality, when they're more focused and better at studying, when they're goal oriented, these are all components of social emotional learning. It's not just about problems. It's about thinking and using your mind in a way where you're more efficient, you're more effective, and and you get more done. And I've gotten so many letters and e-letters that say this works, and I'm glad that I was involved in the curriculum because I'm applying it. And so that's very gratifying when we try to get into schools and the schools are not resistant, but might not have the resources to distribute and deploy the content. It can be a little frustrating, because we've got a free program that if a school doesn't have a budget, we say, well, that's okay, you can have it for free. We thought that would just cure all the problems the American school districts had, being tight budget, and we realized it's not just about the money. You've got to have somebody who can bring this content to the students and and deliver, even if it's just a 5-minute lesson, somebody that can do that. But then we realized, hey, listen, what if we wanted to make it so easy for schools that they didn't have to do almost anything because they're so strapped and pulled in a million directions, and the teachers already have so much content that has to be taught, and they've got standardized testing they've got to prepare for, and there's just a tremendous amount of demand on the American school teacher. We thought, well, what tools do they need to make this successful, to get this into the school? And that's where the video lessons came from. Is we said, you don't have to be an expert in social emotional learning. Press play, and then have an exercise where the students can engage with each other, and it will take on a life of its own. And that has been very successful. So there's frustrating parts of every change, and studying, going back to that topic of change management. The United States doesn't have K through 12 social emotional learning like they do math. Math has been taught for decades and at every level, right? And if we do that with social emotional learning, we're going to see tremendous benefits, but it's going to take a process to get to that point. And you mentioned something, Andrew, earlier before about other people that are anti-SEL. And I just
Mhm.
want to address that quickly, because there are folks who look at social emotional learning as, you're coming in to tell my child what values to have, or or topics of that nature. We do not develop curriculum in any way that is going anywhere near sex, religion, politics. And we consistently come back and have meetings about that, and we say, we're not experts in sexual education. We're going to stay out of politics for the sake of keeping everybody together, and religion. There are different religions, and this has to be away from all three of those topics in order for it to have adoption. And not only that, this is really psychology. This is the science of psychology that this content is based on, and that is not based on religion, politics, or sex. Psychology is a completely different space. And so I like to say we're teaching psychology from kindergarten through 12th grade, when the previous concept was you can't teach psychology until college level. People can't understand this until they've got a good firm grasp on, K through 12 content. And we're starting to realize if we don't teach this in K through 12, our problems are not only going to get worse, but they're going to take over. And so we're realizing students can learn this at kindergarten through 12th grade if it's taught at their level, and if it's taught, in a way that they can be engaged and enjoy it. Then we can simplify the language, and we can teach this, at the early ages, as soon as 5 years old. So I want to say to the audience out there that is anti-SEL is that investigate it, look into it, and pick a version that you really like, and that you can get along with, because this is the human mind and this is human nature. This is not in any way related to sex, religion, or politics. So, with SEL, like I said, with 50 topics just within the Selena program, no school can deploy 50 topics in one calendar year. You're going to have to pick and choose which topics. So choose the topics that your school culture can align with. Pick the topics that you need the most help with. Not all schools need help with this particular topic, but then other schools, would. So, and I don't want to give examples because, I don't want to say this school needs this and that one doesn't. I think that every school needs all 50, but there's got to be a kind of a selection process of these are the topics that we need most based on our culture and the challenges that we're facing as a school district.
So then does that mean ultimately the pathway forward then is through the school systems, or is there multiple avenues that you envision as the path forward?
There are multiple avenues. Yeah, I mean, most school districts and states right now in the U.S. are pro SEL, and they are adopting a social emotional learning curriculum, and it's benefiting the students. It's improving academic performance, and that is huge. If you can get students to study more, to have less testing anxiety, then academic performance goes up, test scores go up. Principals get bigger bonuses, teachers get bigger bonuses, and everybody's happy, and the students benefit. That's the core, most important part, is that does this benefit the student? If it doesn't, then what's the point of all this? And we're seeing that there is the adoption rate, of K through 12 throughout the country that is growing. This is I want to say a mega trend, because people are really starting to understand the importance of mental strength, and how it impacts every other aspect of life. And so, for those areas that say we don't have the time or the budget to put SEL into our school curriculum, aftercare programs, out of school programs, can be used. Summer camps, Boys and Girls Club, YMCA, there's anybody has interaction, with that K through 12 audience. And back to your other question is, this is for everybody. And even though we were laser focused on K through 12 for the past few years, we've been developing professional development, social emotional learning for adults. Anybody after high school that wants to learn social emotional learning, that wants to improve their skills. This is good for the Teach the Teacher program. So how can you teach SEL if you don't know anything about it? So we're, the curriculum that we're developing now for the after high school years, we call it professional development, because the minute you're done with high school, you're a professional, whether you're in college or or right thrown into the workforce immediately after high school. And it's anything from that's 17, 18 years and older can benefit from social emotional learning. And many of the teachers really want this content taught to the teachers of America, so that they can incorporate it into the classroom, even if there is no SEL program. And then if they are ever thrown in to be the SEL teacher, they have competency in that area.
That sounds great. I mean, just seeing it kind of unfold as it goes probably has got to be one very nice perk from your perspective of it, and see how it goes and get bigger.
Yeah, I think, that was another thing that COVID showed us, is that mental emotional health is important. There were so many times where, during COVID, there were people who said, I think I'm going to go crazy because I'm stuck in all day, every day. And I
Mhm.
thought, wait, this is kind of odd, because I remember so many people saying, "Oh, I just wish I could just stay home for a week and not do anything, like, or anywhere." And now you get that. And of course, too much of anything is not good, but um, there were other societies that adapted to COVID a little bit better than we did, and that's what really upset me the most. Is that we've always been a culture of innovation and adaptation and resilience. The American society is very resilient. And so when I saw reports of COVID, negatively impacting a lot of individuals, I thought, come on, let's find the bright, positive part of this and benefit somehow, some way. And so, when mental emotional health was dropping and suicide went up, drug addiction numbers were the most highly tracked, and it went from 70,000 to 90,000 drug overdose deaths in the United States um, during COVID in 2020. It's like, wow, we were so upset as a culture that we lost 20,000 people to 20,000 more, as if 70,000 Americans dying from drug overdose death is not a lot. It is. It's tragic. But you'd think that having some time in the house, with loved ones, would be a benefit to society, and to have so. And now again, a lot of people lost their jobs. There was a tremendous amount of financial stress to a lot of people. So I don't want to say that there weren't challenges, but to me, we could have handled COVID better if we had been mentally, emotionally prepared, educated, trained prior to it happening. COVID was a good test, and it exposed an area where we need to make improvements.
So I guess then I have to phrase it a little bit odd, I guess. What's the light at the end of the tunnel that you see then? Like, what is the hope of that whole thing? Because I mean, it's we're obviously wanting to get to a position where we all can manage the things that are coming at us and be able to, understand others and express formal forms of empathy and engagement in that sphere in all aspects of our lives, not even just, our personal day to day, but others. Um, so, what would you see as uh, uh, the light for that whole thing at the end? Because I mean, we're coming out of COVID is the overall thought and belief, um, and not to touch on that specifically, but like, what is the thought process for at least for you and resilience?
Well, for resilience, we are so early in the stages of developing and distributing. I mean, the first 3 to 5 years of an organization's life, there's so much learning and growing and developing, and we're going to just keep working on improvement. With the growth mindset, like I said, we aim to live it and to grow as an organization and get better. This month than we were last month. And look at it the way an athlete would, of, okay, we might have had a bad moment or bad day, but tomorrow is going to be better. And, we'll overcome challenges, and, we'll keep improving. And so I think with resilience, we want to live the content, that we provide to our customers. Overall, the industry, I think I see good things. I see the Secretary of Education mentioning social emotional learning specifically. That is a good step. That's a step in the right direction. More and more schools adopting social emotional learning tools and curriculum and carving out time for it, and then establishing state standards. I've been very fortunate to help volunteer with Castle's advocacy group, and to see all the advocacy going on throughout the country to promote social emotional learning. And we try to keep our finger on the pulse of America's school districts to see is it going to wax and wane, kind of go up and down, or are we seeing a trend that more and more schools and states are saying, social emotional learning is important. This helps. This is good for us. And we see improvements. We see improvements in the culture and the academic performance. We see improvements in the mental health of the student. So the mega trend with social emotional learning is that it is growing. The adoption rate is climbing, and it's a positive trend. How long will it take? I'm an impatient individual at times, and I wish it were done yesterday. But I'm a realist, and I see that it's going to take time. Change takes time. Um, But like I said before, you can't use a flip phone anymore. Eventually, whether you like smartphones or not, it's beneficial. It's good for you. And eventually there won't be an option, hopefully, with K through 12 that you're going to have to adopt this sort of information and technology because it solves problems, it prevents problems, and it's good for us. And you can customize it to your own particular school and your own culture and your own values. So I do see bright things for SEL. I mean, you can kind of tell I'm a bit of an optimist, but
That's fine. We all
if
we all strive to be.
yeah, and I think being subjected to the content, it's that's a nice benefit, is that it rubs off on you, and you do try to live it. If anything, I'm aware of it more than others, so I know when I'm slipping up. I know if I lost my temper and I yelled at my daughter, and I should be, feel ashamed of myself, because this is the content that I live and I aspire to incorporate into my life. And other individuals aren't like that. They don't even notice if their behaviors have impacted others. And so I think there's a lot of benefit in working in this field, that you kind of catch bad behavior. And everybody has some sort of quirk or behavior challenge, or either mental or emotional hurdle that they've got to overcome, and areas to improve. Nobody's perfect. And so back to your question, is I do see bright things for social emotional learning long term overall, and I'm excited about it. Wish it would happen sooner. And back to Bill and Melinda Gates. If we had a tremendous amount of donations that supported social emotional learning, things would happen quicker. And again, tell me any problem in the world, and I can tell you how a mental emotional state caused a behavior that led us to that situation, that led to that problem. And I know with Melinda Gates, there are certain topics that she's very concerned with, and I think that if I had a chance to sit down and talk with her, as well as with other philanthropists, and say, social emotional learning is going to have a resonance, going to have a ripple effect in helping to address the concerns that you have and the topics that you're passionate about. If you'd only invest in social emotional learning for K through 12 and get it out there quicker, we'd see a lot less problems, and have to deal with a lot less on the back end in a reactive way. Preventive medicine, right? It's a lot cheaper than reactive medicine.
Well, I really do hope you get the opportunity at some point, and I hope everything continues to go in the positive direction. So we're going to be going ahead and wrapping up here. I do really want to thank you on behalf of myself and on behalf of the Orange County Library System for joining us, John. And we're going to be going ahead and wrap up. And I hope everybody out there has a wonderful evening, and you all have a good night.
Thank you, Andrew. Appreciate your time.
Not a problem. Thank you.
Thanks for watching. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. Be the first to find out when we have new fun and informative videos for you. Orange County Library System is your place to learn, grow, connect.